Welcome to the Pink Pineapple Podcast, where we peel back Femtech and take a bite out of more than just the juicy bits.
I'm Claudia, and I'm Emma's partner in Pineapple for this adventure.
And I'm Emma. Together, we're exploring women's health across the full timeline, from first periods to menopause and everything in between.
Each week, we'll dive into the stories, science, and software shaping the future of women's health. From hormones to hardware, fertility to Femtech founders.
Think of us as your slightly nosy best friends who just happen to be doctors with a healthy curiosity for innovation.
We'll be chatting to clinicians, creators, and change makers. And yes, asking the questions you actually want answered.
So whether you're out for a walk, cooking dinner, or hiding from your to-do list, join us as we get curious, clinical, and occasionally controversial.
This is the Pink Pineapple Podcast,
where women's health meets what's next. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pink Pineapple Podcast. This is an episode with myself and Claudia and
the pineapple listening intently. It's just got its headphones on, more precisely my headphones on. That is the level of effort for today's pineapple.
So why Claudia is a pineapple listening intently to this episode?
So we thought that for this episode, it'd be quite fun just to look back at 2025 and just talk about some of our key, the things that stood out basically for us in the women's health and femtech space.
Yeah, so we've had a good think, haven't we? And we know it's been a really interesting year. There's been lots of different fundraisers. There's been some controversial stories. There's been some interesting trends, but we decided to focus on 5 stories that we think are worth highlighting. So do you want to go first, Claudia, with one of your top picks?
All right, I will go first. So my first one is about one wearable, one blood pressure feature, and one FDA warning, and a huge debate. And this is, of course, about Whoop, which is a fitness wearable that's really well known for tracking sleep, recovery, strain. They received an FDA warning over how they were marketing their blood pressure feature. And I'm a really big fan of Whoop. I love Whoop. I have used Whoop in the past, and I quite love the data that you can get from it. But yeah, this blood pressure feature raised a few eyebrows. And what's also really interesting is that the company doubled down and said that it's a wellness insight. It's not a medical measurement. And I think it's become a really defining moment of the last year, and also a clear signal really of how blurred the lines become between consumer wellness tech and regulated medical devices. One to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I thought this was a really interesting story as well. And I think, like you said, there's this grey kind of murky area between wellness and medical devices. And I think you could take a room full of people and you could speak to them about this story. And I think you would see a split where some people would agree that, yes, this is wellness. This is not a medical device. And others who would say, with the data that's being handled, with the impact that these measurements can have, and, the potential for a diagnostic element, this is a medical device. Yeah. So I think it's a subject which will definitely spark debate.
Who are you in that room? Are you team medical device or team non-medical device?
I am team medical device. And the reason for that is because I think that particularly with things like wearables, we are getting a lot of information. We're getting a lot of data. And I think that if that data exists, we have a responsibility to make sure that data is handled with care. And I think if you can see, so for example, in the context of blood pressure, if you could see that someone was having like a hypertensive crisis, they had malignant hypertension, I feel that because we've seen that data, or the algorithm has seen that data, there is a responsibility to signpost that person and make sure there is appropriate safety net in there. So I am team medical device. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think you should make features like this accessible to as many people as possible. I really do. I think there's so much great stuff that you could do with knowing what your blood pressure is and having this sort of monitoring in the background, this kind of data. However, I think if you have it and you see it and you don't act on it, then I do have a problem with that. And I think what we should be doing is we should be looking at how do we make it so that a device like this can be safe, hence regulated, without it being so complicated to achieve that, so that people can benefit from what their blood pressure is, perhaps finding out they're hypertensive long before they otherwise would have, thanks to their wearable, but in a very safe and regulated way. So yeah, let's watch this space. Let's see what happens. But I think this was quite a defining moment of 2025.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. On to the next one.
So,
Would you like to pick one?
yeah, I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm going to cover, I know I mentioned trends in the intro, but we have seen some really big trends. And I think the biggest we've seen is probably in GLP-1s. And again, I think this is a bit of a Marmite topic and another where you could see a lot of discussion, but I've seen a lot about GLP-1s within the industry. We've also seen promotion and celebrities discussing openly about their use of GLP-1s. Serena Williams, for example, is someone that's talked very openly about her own struggles with weight loss postpartum and the fact that she was using GLP-1 medication to help her with her weight loss. And we've also seen kind of investors backing GLP-1 based treatments and platforms. So, for example, SheMed this year, they were the first female founded unicorn, and they have done, an amazing raise and are being really successful with what they have cultivated. And I think it's only going to go from strength to strength. I think in 2026, we'll probably be talking about this again, but I think we'll be maybe looking at, for example, GLP-1s plus. So I think I've mentioned before to yourself, Claudia, about maybe platforms trying to do a bit more of a holistic approach for particularly women, thinking about GLP-1s and maybe HRT, and kind of co-managing those medications together and coming up with kind of a support around that. What are your thoughts on this trend?
Yeah, I think the same. I think we will get into this GLP-1 plus. So it will be also just things like nutrition. One of the things that we learnt from one of the first episodes that we did was speaking to Jenny Dowley from Building Bones, and we touched on GLP-1s and the importance of maintaining your muscle mass and strength and maintaining your bone health. And I think this is an area to watch very much, that we make sure that people who are taking GLP-1s are well enough supported that they know how to come off it, they're going to come off it, and also how else they can maintain their bodies and their health whilst they are on it. So I agree, it's very much an evolving space, and it's going to be an interesting one to watch for the next year. Shall I go with my next one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next one is around investment. It's around funding, because it's very, very important in the health tech world and startup land. And one of the biggest women's health moments of 2025 for me didn't come from a startup, but it came from a 2.5 million, not million, billion actually, dollar pledge. So yeah, looking back at the stories that shaped 2025, I think philanthropy was probably one of the biggest stories. So the Gates Foundation made its largest ever commitment to women's health, and it pledged, like I said, $2.5 billion through to 2030. The goal really is to fund long neglected areas like maternal health, gynecology, contraception, conditions like preeclampsia. So I think it was a real turning point, and it really signaled that women's health innovation is no longer niche, but really a global priority.
Yeah. And I think what was really nice about this as well is their focus on kind of developing countries as well and middle income countries. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to be mindful with health tech, is making sure that we're trying to get equitable access to solutions and making sure that we're not kind of reinforcing health inequalities by having it that only those who can afford to get the best digital health are those that are getting it. So I think that their focus as well on making sure that those who are in lower income countries, are getting that research and getting that funding is really critical. Because particularly, in some of these areas where people have to travel miles and miles for any kind of healthcare and checkups, the potential of digital technologies and health tech in those areas is just enormous, isn't it? So I think that it's fantastic that you are having that money coming from the Gates Foundation.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who receives that funding, and to keep an eye, I guess, on those and just follow them through the next 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. And the next story we're going to look at is a story which really kind of touched my heart, to be honest. And I think it was probably because I could relate to it quite a lot. So, one of the most controversial moments for me in 2025 was when Davina, a British health tech entrepreneur and CEO of Human Vantage AI, was refused entry to London Tech Week because she'd gone with her daughter in a pram. And she'd had traveled for, I think it was 3 hours there. She had multiple meetings arranged and she was turned away at the door. And I really, really felt for her because I suppose as someone who had, you know, a small baby at the time, I can appreciate that that 3 hour journey was probably not an easy one to make. And I think trying to run a business when you've got other commitments can be really hard. And I think that, there are a lot of female founders who are trying to manage this juggle. And I think we need to be, if we can, having events where women can
Mm,
come, they can if they need to bring their smaller children, particularly if they're
yep.
breastfeeding, and that is a thought for event organizers and that it's
Yeah.
not an afterthought, if that makes sense.
Yep, totally agree. I really felt for her as well. And I remember actually going with my 3-month-old to an event and getting stuck on floors because there were steps between where the lift was and where the room was and all of this. But still, I had my carrier and I put the baby in, and I understand that you can't completely change a venue to suit me, but I will make it work because I really wanted to be. So yeah, I felt the same. I think when I was still working as a GP, one of the things that I did on maternity leave was set up conferences. What's it called that you have to do? What's the
CPD.
training? CPD. That's it. One of the
Yeah.
things that I did was set up these continuous professional development events that parents on parental leave could come with their baby. And it was great because we had a whole room, we had soft play in it. We had various spaces where you could breastfeed if you want to, you could pump, and you could still be a part of the event. And then what we did was we actually took that to the Royal College of GPs. And at the annual conference, they set up a room. We helped them set up a room with soft play in it, all the facilities that you'd need, and a great big screen. And you could watch what was happening on the main stage in this room. So I know actually, it's not difficult to accommodate for these mums or dads. It's going to be a tiny number. It's going to make a huge difference to them. And to have a room with a screen is one way, whilst also obviously allowing people to go into the main rooms if they want to. And they're just being a general shared understanding that if baby starts crying and is making a lot of noise and is disrupting people, then much like if you were having a massive coughing fit, you would leave, you would do the same.
Yeah.
Also with your baby. Parents are so sensible and often more sensitive to their baby and the noises their baby is making than anybody else in the room. So yeah, I think we really should petition for much more parent inclusive events and
Yeah.
conferences. It's terribly unfair without it.
And I think as well, do you know what? I think there are a few conferences they don't mind, but they don't make it transparent enough during their booking process. And I think if people can't see it, then they don't think it's happening. I know when I was at the Fix, I saw a couple of babies there, and it was such a wonderful event, and that was great. But I don't think I saw it that clearly on their booking. So I think that that's one thing I would say
Mm.
to organisers is if it's possible in your FAQs, maybe make it a separate thing. I think it's great that people are doing it, but maybe we're just not hearing about it enough in the examples of kind of good practice in that area. And then did we have one final one, Claudia?
I think we do. Yeah. There's one more, which is yeah, probably one of the most talked about topics. It's quite recent as well, so it's more towards the latter end of 2025. But it was around censorship of women's health issues on social media. I'm not going to say this is just a 2025 thing. Actually, this has been going on for quite a while, quite a few years. Actually, it's been a pretty big story, but it seems to have gained more traction recently, so the latter end of 2025. And I think for anybody that's interested in hearing more around the censorship of women's health information and women's health tech, it's worth having a listen to one of our episodes that we did with Anna O'Sullivan. And in that episode, she really goes into what is actually happening out there and how it is impacting brands And obviously also how it impacts women as a whole, that they're not able to have access to all this health information that they should be able to have access to. So check that episode out, because I think it's a really important big one.
I think that was probably one of the most valuable episodes that we've recorded. I think that, and certainly from a learning point for me, it was huge. I feel like I'd kind of been living under a rock in some ways, not knowing, particularly with regards to like the finance side of things and people having insurance cancelled and being debanked and completely blind to those kind of things. So yeah, definitely check that episode out. There are top 5 moments of the year. I'm sure that you will all have your own, and we'd really like to hear about those. So feel free to let us know, comment on, Instagram or our page on LinkedIn, because I'm sure that there are some which have resonated more with you than these, and we'd like to hear about them. And on to 2026.
Yeah, let's see what it holds for us in the Femtech space. But exciting stuff.
Fab.
Happy Christmas and have a lovely new year.
Bye. Thanks for being here. We love having you with us on this journey through women's health and innovation.
Follow us on Instagram at the Pink Pineapple Podcast for clips, conversations, and the latest in women's health and femtech.
We'll see you next week. Same pineapple, new topic. Everything we talk about on the Pink Pineapple Podcast is here to inform and inspire, but it's not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you're worried about your health, please reach out to your GP or healthcare provider.